And that's the one thing about LA, but also probably with my own art and that I love about Hollywood and Los Angeles is the ghosts, the spirits that linger. That for me, in this land of sunshine and palm trees, is just filled with souls that are hungry for a sense of stardom and life and the world.
This is Five Places, Los Angeles, a living documentary of the city produced by the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design. I'm Emmanuelle Bourlier, and in each episode, I ask one interviewee about the five places that define Los Angeles for them. I'm thrilled to share my interview with artist Gary Baseman, and I highly recommend watching on YouTube, since throughout our conversation, Gary shares some of his extraordinary drawings and sketchbooks, and his beautiful cat Bosco makes several appearances. Los Angeles native Gary Baseman is an interdisciplinary artist whose work explores the human condition through fine art, illustration, performance, film, fashion, and toy design. Known for his raw style and humor, his art has appeared in international publications, including The Atlantic, The New Yorker, The New York Times, Time, and Rolling Stone. In games and toys, such as Cranium, digital collectibles with VeVe, and in the ABC Disney animated series and feature film Teacher's Pet, for which he was creator and executive producer. Baseman's awards include multiple Emmys, a British Academy of Film and Television Arts Award, and Fulbright and Sundance New Frontier Fellowships. His many brand collaborations include Coach, Lladro, and Dr. Martens. His fine art has been exhibited in museums and galleries throughout Asia, Australasia, Europe, North America, and South America. As Gary shares his stories of LA, I wonder if you will feel as I did, that his work is deeply intertwined with the city in a magical feedback loop. It's as though Gary Baseman and Los Angeles have been in a thoughtful and playful back and forth throughout his life, and both are richer for it, as are we. How long have you lived in LA? And what brought you to LA? Or if you were born here, what brought your family here?
Right. So I was born here. So birth brought me to LA at Kaiser Hospital on Sunset. And my first 6 months were in Boyle Heights, where my family lived in I think a one bedroom. So it was four kids and a mom and dad. And I don't know how they survived that. And then they moved to the Fairfax district. The Fairfax district in the late 50s, early 60s was a unique neighborhood where it was kind of filled with relocated Holocaust survivors, which that's what my parents were. So somehow the Jews who were displaced in Eastern Europe, who survived one of the most horrific events of mankind, moved when they moved to LA. Again, they kind of moved all over the world. And in fact, my parents first were in Austria in a displacement camp, then moved to Canada. And everyone in my family was once a Canadian citizen, except for me. And then they moved to LA. And that's when I was born. So I was this American dream accident baby. So the Fairfax district was a unique place where, again, Fairfax Boulevard was filled with a lot of Yiddish, Jewish restaurants, butcher shops, fruit stands, and the neighborhood was just filled with survivors. So to the right of me, to the right of me, I guess this left, in front of me, everywhere were Holocaust survivors. And my parents' friends and the organizations that they were part of were all of survivors. So my parents' first language was Yiddish, but they instilled the sense of to their children, and especially me being the American dream accident baby, that America was my home and to live the American dream, and that English was my language. So they saved Yiddish for themselves to commiserate. So that's how I grew up in Hollywood and LA, surrounded, and the neighborhood that I grew up in was quite special. which also plays a big role in our 5 places LA.
Wonderful. Yes, I can
So that
imagine.
brought me to LA. But then again, I moved to New York for 10 years. So I never studied art formally. I've been an artist since I was a child, and I always wanted to be a international artist. And growing up in LA, I felt LA, even though it was the hub for entertainment, for art, and especially publishing world, it was New York. And so I took trips to New York, then eventually moved to New York, where I started working for every major publication and an ad agency. And then when I wanted to work back in TV, I came back to Los Angeles in '96. So, and then since then, I haven't left. I mean, I've traveled the world, but LA has been my home.
Did you feel differently about LA coming back to it a second time?
Yes. Well, especially where I personally was, since I felt like I've made a mark already in New York and had a very strong presence as an illustrator. I
Mhm.
was starting to move into fine art as a painter, and there was this growth in more of this kind of underground world of painting that wasn't accepted in New York at the time, where my
Mhm.
friend Mark Ryden introduced me to the Mendenhall Gallery, and the word lowbrow. I created this term called pervasive art in the sense of creating art that can work in any medium and that it's perceived everywhere. So that world started exploding in Los Angeles. And small galleries and other galleries were all kind of participating in that. But at the same time, I was also been spending the last decade in TV development. So in New York, I started doing pilots for an animated series that never got picked up that I did with Nickelodeon. And then eventually, when it came back to LA, I started pitching all over town. And Disney gave me a development deal that turned into a animated series and a feature film. So coming back to LA, it did feel a lot more the possibilities, and my confidence in creating images that were resonating internationally felt much more so than when before I left. Well, before I left, also I was barely published, and even though I did a few things for the LA Times, not until I got the cover of the New York Times book review, and I did the entire issue in 1986. That gave me the confidence to move to New York. Was kind of the beginning. Confidence in the sense of creating strong visual images, and then developing my voice, my artistic voice, and taking different risks as an artist.
Yeah.
So even though within the first few years and developing a mark in the illustration advertising world, I was also hungry for a lot more. So even from that early stages, because I never studied editorial advertising art, it's what I fell into. And so I started experimenting a lot with my own imagery that started getting published in more avant-garde publications. And for me, the hunger to explore other mediums like TV, and outside of the traditional venues, I kind of we're moving towards that. And then when I started having exhibitions and I can create a body of work with a theme and bring that out to the world, and then wanting to explore that, and then that turned into art performance. And so for me, still to this day, working in other mediums and keeping it very playful, and but at the same time, I don't know, trying to create work that will inspire others, and hopefully in a way understand humanity. The way when I have to use a one phrase to describe my art, it's that I kind of explore and celebrate the beauty of the bittersweetness of life, that nothing is perfect, and how to accept our own flaws, which, I still try to do.
Well, that's an ongoing project, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can
For
explore
anyone.
that forever. Well, I think it's wonderful the way you challenge yourself through all different media. It must keep things pretty exciting.
We try to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the world and everything keeps, for everyone, is still exciting. No matter how successful or unsuccessful you are, you're hungry and you're want a certain amount of success and what the definition of what success is. And then at the same time, continuing on and wanting to produce things and getting it out to people.
Yeah, I think success is different for everyone and
Yeah,
and maybe even evolves for one person, right? As
exactly.
well. Yeah.
Sure.
So what's the first place that defines the city for you?
It would be Canter's. And a lot of
Right.
people seem to have picked that, place as a hub because it has, it's this LA institution. It's
Mhm.
been around again, originally in Boyle Heights, like where I was from, and then it moved to the Fairfax district. But my mom happened to be the head bakery sales lady at Canter's for 35 years. So
Wow.
from practically the moment I was born till the almost the year 2000 or so, she worked in the bakery. She was working behind the counter selling challah and bagels and arugula. So for me, Canter's was a place that touched me every single day of my life while she worked there. And when she passed away about 10 years ago, still, my siblings and I will go eat there to remember my mom and then also I'm a creature of habit. I'm also someone who carries a sketchbook wherever I go, and I've been doing that for many, 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 many years, close since till I was almost like 18, 19 years old. And so I have like this sketchbook number, I think it's 155, 155.
Oh,
See
wow.
it falling
Oh,
apart.
and that
Still
that's a
not done
big
with it
sketchbook.
because I carry it around wherever I go.
Yeah.
And and when I travel the world, or when I used to travel the world, I would carry it and document what I was experiencing. Since I've been in LA most of the time, the last few years, these books have been documenting Los Angeles. And because I would eat somewhere like at Canter's, and this is one of the drawings that I did while having a meal. Okay. Here's a drawing of my mom and my cat Blackie and Toby outside of Canter's. So, but I did that in one of the booths while I was probably having breakfast. I've done so many drawings at Canter's that Canter's itself, again, another garbage truck.
I can't hear it.
Oh, you can't? All right.
No.
So then I just sound like a crazy person. All right. So not that I'm not, but
We all are a little bit. No,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't hear it, so don't worry
Okay.
about
Oh, perfect, perfect.
it.
Because that's all I could hear.
But also feel
It,
free to just take a break if you need to, because I can edit out any, you know,
okay. Take a
gaps
break.
or whatever. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. We can take a 5 minute nap.
Okay, perfect. So I've done so many drawings at Canter's. The good folks at Canter's, because they knew all the drawings I've been doing, gave me my own booth. So there's a basement booth at Canter's.
Fantastic.
So there's 16 of my drawings that I did in my sketchbook that they reproduced and framed and have them up on a wall. So it's a way for me to celebrate my mom and my family, and so we're still planning on having some kind of dedication with a plaque that hasn't been put on yet. So we'll probably do that sometime later in 2023.
That's
And
wonderful.
yeah, so I have that history where, and a little different than most people, because a lot of people have so many memories of just late night at Canter's, because Canter's used to be a 24-hour place, and
Right.
after people would go to rock and roll clubs, would hang out at Canter's, and I've done some of that. But for me growing up, with my mom at Canter's, I really didn't eat at Canter's growing up because that's where my mom worked. So I would maybe go with my dad to pick up my mom at the end of the day, which was like 2 o'clock, because she worked from like 6 in the morning to 2, to pick her up to take her home so she can watch her soap operas. Um, or I would later, when she would have a lunch break, I would come and visit and sit by her. But not until after she passed did I make it a regular place to have breakfast. And then also I went to elementary school with Jackie Canter. So there was always that notion, and went to elementary school, junior high, high school with her. So always having that there. Then now with the legacy of Canter's, and for me having that closeness, Canter's plays such a role. Like even when I went to New York, I would have them at the FedEx cheese danishes to me so I could just taste, you know. Oh. And but now it's chocolate arugula. And so if I'm coming to someone's home, I'll probably bring some chocolate arugula as a gift. I'm actually even working on creating a character based on arugula, and that's a whole other secret project.
Wonderful.
So Canter's plays a big role.
Oh, yeah. And your relationship to it has evolved throughout your life too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From this is the place my mom works at to now a place where, in some ways I feel a sense of community and home there.
That's beautiful. Shall we talk about your second place?
Let's talk about my second place. And the second place plays such a strong role and that's the one thing about LA, but also probably with my own art, and that I love about Hollywood and Los Angeles, is the ghosts, the spirits that linger, that for me, in this land of sunshine and palm trees, is just filled with souls that are hungry for a sense of stardom and life and the world, which actually impact all my choices. Yeah. But the second one, in a sense, these buildings don't exist anymore. But these buildings were the foundation of who I am. And they were across the street from where I lived. So that was the one thing that also made the Fairfax district in the 50s even I wasn't born in the 50s, but such the center of the city. And I lived across the street from the Pan Pacific Auditorium and the Gilmore Drive-In. So I don't know if you know these buildings at all.
No, but there was a drive-in right in the middle of the Fairfax district?
There was everything there. There was the Pan Pacific movie theater, the Pan Pacific bowling alley, and the Pan Pacific Auditorium was used the way you would use the convention center. So they would have events. In 1957, before I was born, that's where Elvis Presley first sang in Los Angeles. They would have the auto shows there. They would have the boat shows. They would have the fishing shows. They would actually have fake lakes they would bring in with fish that people would go in and go fishing. They had conventions. I kind of remember, and I don't know if it was William Shatner or Leonard Nimoy singing at the Pan Pacific Auditorium at some event. My brother would sometimes work there, my brother Sam. My sister and my brothers knew how to sneak in through the back way. I was really young. I'm the baby in the family by 10 years. So basically, my siblings would be forced to take me. So if I was 4, my sister was 14, my brother was 15, my other brother was 17. They would find ways to get in. And my brother Sam always had some kind of angle and was able to work and make some kind of money in that world. So the Pan Pacific Auditorium was built in the 30s. It was a hub of many events in the 60s, but it started, I think, in the 70s. It closed down. And not till the mid 80s, it was kind of decrepit. And then there was an arson, which I'm sure was done on purpose, but it was a beautiful Art Deco building. It was, if you go to California Adventures at Disneyland, the entryway is a homage to the Pan Pacific Auditorium.
Yeah.
So it had a very strong, beautiful structure. And for me as a kid, that was the building that I would look at and go, wow, and it was across the street from where I lived. So, but also with that came the Pan Pacific movie theater and bowling alley. They had an ice rink there at the Pan Pacific Auditorium occasionally. So they did a lot of things. I would see a lot of movies, the B movies that would play at the Pan Pacific Auditorium. But then also growing up in this Jewish neighborhood, there was never enough temples. So during the high holidays, they would turn the Pan Pacific Auditorium into a shul for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur. And so my parents would go there to go to the for services, and especially when you would have to fast. And the funny thing is, they would just cover up the concession stand. So you'd be going there and spend the whole day where you have to go to temple and pray and daven and fast and smell the popcorn.
Oh my goodness. That's a
So,
test of faith.
yeah, exactly. So, and then they also had, so it was a very interesting kind of place to have the high holidays there. So a lot of memories in the sense of that neighborhood. And then also there's the Gilmore Drive-In, which where the Grove is, or right next to the Grove. Again, another big, beautiful green Art Deco structure. You could see a moment of it in Annie Hall. There's a scene where they drive by it, and so they have a kind of a view of the Gilmore Drive-In. My brother Sam, again, worked in the concession stand at the Gilmore Drive-In. And one of my biggest memories as a little kid is being in my pajamas. We would take the car in, and the kids would sit there in their pajamas, and you would have the speaker be put on the window. But because my brother worked in the concession stand, I got to go behind the scenes, which all I remember is pissing everybody off because I was like in awe of the candy, the real popcorn that was there, the hot dogs, and all that stuff all around. And I was disturbing everyone. And so I remember being taken to, there was these swings, like a little playground, which even back then, by the mid 60s, I felt like was already kind of rusted out and stuff. And I was forced to go there. But then also from our fourplex where we lived in, even though we were a couple blocks away, from our window, you could see the screen.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And so my siblings would sometimes try to watch movies from a distance. It was like that big, but you could see the movies being played. And then also as a little kid, if my dad drove down Beverly Boulevard, you could see the screen a little closer, but I would be in the back seat, and I would, as a little kid, just pray that there was an R-rated movie so I could get a glimpse of a naked girl. But that's the thing, is that neighborhood had the Pan Pacific Auditorium, the Gilmore Drive-In, another half a mile on Beverly, what is the mall called? The Beverly Center.
The Beverly Center, yes.
Was Kittyland, Beverly Park. So that was actually an amusement park and pony rides for kids. So that was also another place where you're like, oh my God. And then there was Tale of the Pup right there. So all around was like a explosion for kids and teens, in this Fairfax district area. It was a real special place.
Oh, this is so interesting. I never knew any of this history.
Yeah. but it
It's
doesn't
fast.
exist now. So now there's Pan Pacific Park that tries to pay respect to the Pan Pacific Auditorium with one small pillar that represented the theater, and
Yeah.
it's okay. But in fact, part of me would love to work with the city to make it even more engaging and playful. But yeah, and then there's the Grove now, which is the place where people like to go and shop and hang out. But that's the
But
farmers
quite a
market.
different vibe than what you just described.
Right. Well, but the farmers market was always there too. So for
Right.
me, growing up, by the Gilmore Drive-In was the farmers market. So that's
Yeah.
where you go, and that's where you get your slice of pizza, and
Yeah.
and there's fruit stands there, and across the street was Fisher's Hamburgers, which was another place. And then you're right next to CBS Television City, and that's and I'm right there in the hub. For me, it was like this is LA, this is Hollywood, this is everything. Because
Yeah.
right next to the Gilmore is CBS Television City, which now is there's fences and gates, but there wasn't when I was growing up. You could walk to the building to get a ticket, go to the Carol Burnett show, watch
Wow.
The Price is Right.
It's kind of amazing. So you started talking about this collection of buildings by talking about ghosts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, the buildings themselves are the spirits. That just
Yeah.
all the spirits. And but even like when I'm eating at Canter's, the spirits of my parents, of my mom, like my mom also would celebrities would always eat at Canter's, especially those who worked at CBS Television City. So when
Right.
she could, she would get me autographs. For me, all of this is this connection in a way to the past. But
Right.
then
Right.
instead of like living in the past, how do you use these memories to create things that are new,
Yeah.
relationships that are new? But that's what I've been trying to do for a lot of things. Speaking of more ghosts, if we go beyond
Yeah.
to the third place, which is the La Brea Tar Pits, a place that was, the way I see it is like my kind of kryptonite, you
Wow.
know, because I always hated the smell of tar. And every time I would smell tar as a kid, it would just immediately give me a headache. But for me, it's kind of like it it was for me, I saw it again like Superman, where this is where I come from. This is the place that makes you weak and makes you humble. And again, the tar pits, growing up there, and even to this day, and even during the pandemic, was in my bubble. So for me, I saw the Colombian mammoths that are in the tar pits. They were part of my bubble. Every day during the pandemic, I would walk to them and take a selfie with them. And I did it for over a year. So I had
Wow.
pictures of me from short hair to very long hair, and then when I cut off my hair. So the tar pits was a place where, you know, is the greatest collection of Ice Age fossils. So that's where saber-toothed cats, like Bosco, come here, Bosco. Ah,
Oh, it's
it's
Bosco.
Bosco. So Columbian mammoths, mastodons, dire wolves. Hey, Bosco. And so all of the
Beautiful.
fossils are right there. And then even the sculptures that I think of the Columbian mammoths that they brought in the 60s, I think they're fiberglass or, they're, it's actually a terrifying story that as a kid, every day
Yeah.
you would see it. And for me, I would go there every day and
Hmm.
remember them. And even though they're, these sculptures, for me, I see the pain of
Yeah.
this poor mom,
Oh my
Colombian
God.
mammoth,
Yeah.
stuck in the tar, dying, with her husband crying and her little baby crying for help because they're helpless because she's going to die, you know?
It's
And
traumatizing.
yeah, but you go by it every day and you just kind of get used to it. And for
Mhm.
me, I almost, as a kid, you just kind of accept this these images, and when you
Yeah.
get older, you kind of look at it and go, oh my God, and so it's in some ways playful. And even though I think they're renovating that area with their brand new LACMA, they're not going to get rid of those guys. Those guys are so iconic and so important that, and so for me, I have this special love for the tar pits. So during the
Yeah.
pandemic, I would go there. In fact, when Bosco was a kitten, I'd take him to the park and we'd hang out and I would draw and he would hang out and sometimes climb on trees until he got in trouble because cats aren't allowed to climb trees at the tar pits. So the guards would tell me to take him down.
Oh.
Uh, so it's just that their history was there. And when the Tar Pits was rebranding, they invited me to do a bunch of videos to talk about my love of the Tar Pits. And I did so with the request that I had my character Toby, who is somewhere around here. He's the keeper of your secrets. And he's like an art piece that I try to blur the lines between fine art and toy culture. So I've taken Toby to, I don't know how many countries around the world and documented him in my travels. I requested that I can dip Toby in the tar pits. And they kept changing their minds, saying yes to no. And come on, Bosco. He's back again. So they said yes. And so I was able to document Toby in the tar pits. So that was again like a dream come true. Something that as a kid growing up in the neighborhood, when I was in junior high and going around the tar pits, wanting to do something mischievous and having that dream to be able to dip him in the tar pits was great. And so for me, the tar pits has that special love. And then when my cat, Blackie the cat, passed away, who I had for 15 years, and he's based on, I had an exhibition in Beijing called 9 Lives about his teachings before Bosco. So when I had the memorial for him, it was 1 year to the day that he passed. I had it at the Brea Tar Pits. It was really special. It was like using some of his amazing gifts, like his power purr. We had a moment of his purr. We did a stroll because he was the greatest strolling cat, and he was the greatest talking cat. And a lot of people knew who Blackie was through social media because I would have these conversations. He had the Blackie the Cat show, and it was really lovely to be able to have it at the La Brea Tar Pits, and especially since that's where his ancestors are. Like there is where the bones of saber-toothed cats are. And so for me, it was a very, it's kind of a sacred and beautiful place.
Yes.
Yeah. So then next, I kept going back and forth to these two places. And I ended up, I was going to talk about this hill in Griffith Park that I had no relationship with until the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I started hiking into Griffith Park and developing this special relationship with the areas I would hike in, going up from the bottom of the observatory, which is like one of my favorite buildings. It's so beautiful. But then going up to Mount Hollywood. And then I would just venture off, which is something I would never do in LA. And during the pandemic, I would just keep going. And sometimes I would end up hiking to the Hollywood sign over to Lake Hollywood. But then there was the third hill off of Mount Hollywood before you get to the Hollywood sign became my hill that I would hike to the top of and just spend time there. And I would just like in the morning, just like sit. But that was kind of interesting of needing to find this sense of nature within the sense, of LA, and then develop relationships with the hawks that would go around. Rarely would see snakes, but butterflies also, and just, kind of like get a different sense of LA. So I was going to talk about that place. And then I started thinking of the witch's house. Do you know that house?
No.
Okay. So the Spadina house, which I didn't know that name until I was an adult, always the witch's house. So growing up in LA, and then also running track and cross country at Fairfax High, that was the house we would run to, like when we would go out and do a 6 mile run. So it was like 3 miles there, 3 miles back. And it's right next to the fountain on Wilshire and Little Santa Monica. It's a house that was built in Culver City as a set for probably like a Hansel Gretel, a fairy tale. And then in the early 30s, it was moved to Beverly Hills. And it's a very beautiful house. In fact, when we were like in high school, we would go run there and always wonder who's the witch that lived in there and try to look over the fence and stuff like that. But for me, that was like a very special home. Like for me, my favorite home in LA. And as an adult, I ended up meeting and becoming friends with Michael LeBeau, who owns the house. So he was a real estate guy who bought the house like in '98 and has fixed it up beautifully. And during Halloween, he'll invite friends over to help hand out candy because he'll have thousands and thousands of kids who come to the house or trick or treat. There's a lot of special homes in LA. For me, there's something iconic that kind of captures this, again, fairy tale darkness, and even when you see all these places, you start thinking of who are the people who lived in there in the past and what happened in their life and the history that's there, and the struggle and the success and the hardship, and with all these things, as much as I see the beauty, I see the
Right. Well, it's
hardship.
the bittersweetness of life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the last place, or the fifth place, not the last, this thing,
Right.
for me would be Musso and Frank's, a place I didn't go to when I was younger. Being my dad was an electrician and my mom was the head bakery sales lady at Canter's, we rarely went out to restaurants or in places like that. And we were not part of the Hollywood scene and culture. And even though I was surrounded by it, we would see famous people here and there, but it wasn't something that I was engaging in until I became an adult and became an artist and being somewhat well known, and then also working in TV and film. But the love of Musso and Frank's, that we actually have the same birthday, which is September 27th. But
Oh,
Musso's is a little older than me, since it's been around since 1919.
right.
Has so much Hollywood history. And what's extra special about the place is the quality of the food is still amazing. They still make the best martinis.
Mhm.
The people that work there have so much history, and they really, still live in that kind of era. And they're there to make an experience for everyone. So if you
Mhm.
are a tourist coming to really experience Hollywood, or a regular who lives in Hollywood, you go back there just to hang out, and there's ghosts everywhere, all around, the beauty of the place, and for me, there's just something that's extremely special. And within the last couple of years, I would go sit at the bar generally because I loved interacting with the bartenders, steal a menu, and start drawing on the menus and trying to capture what the experience, which I've been doing for quite a long time with dining and food and in my travels of culture. And more so now within the last few years of LA, since I haven't been traveling as much. So when I go to Musso and Frank's, it's not just to have a meal. I have to prep myself to really try to capture something more. And I've been working on a series of drawings from my meals in LA, like at the Chateau Marmont. I've been working on a series on their stationery, but with Musso's on their menus, and again other places that I've been eating, like Genghis Cohen or Formosa Cafe, or there's just a love that I have for Los Angeles, and I love the challenge of being able to draw and eat and dine and to have a special experience. But like something like I didn't pick the chateau, even though I love the chateau, is that I feel like I don't really know the ghosts as well yet, even though I've done quite a few drawings there. Like I still haven't felt that I've immersed myself yet. I went through a tough time where they closed down or only let certain guests in, and where with Musso's, once they opened up, they're back. So normally if I'm going by myself or maybe with one friend, we'll eat at the bar and have this kind of experience. Lately, if I go with a bigger group, we'll get a booth. And I've been fortunate to have a good relationship with the folks at Musso's to get a special booth that hopefully one day will be named after me.
Yeah.
But capture that magic, and it's been actually fun because a lot of the servers, you could see them coming over to visit me over and over again, which makes it extra special service. But I think they're trying to get into the drawing.
Yeah.
So they could end up being immortal through the art.
I would do that for sure.
If the art doesn't end up at the Rose Bowl flea market, after I'm gone, So, well, I did, like this Sunday, I was over for Mother's Day. And so I was trying to put in a lot of famous moms. So from the Virgin Mary to Whistler's mother, to Carol Brady, to Mother Teresa, to Lucille Ball, to Marge Simpson, Mama Cass Elliott, my mother, Mary Helperman from my TV series, and Mom Mabley. So again, and then my server, and so trying to bring everybody in. But these are just a small example, and then here too is kind of again just trying to capture the atmosphere of Musso's, And
those are extraordinary. So how many of those do you have at this point?
Well, wow. These are just some that aren't filed away, so I have these out. And then here too is like right after I saw the Thin Man, I started drawing them, and then we were having dinner with my friends Linda Ramone and JD King. And we had some extra special guests. And here you can see sometimes I draw Hitchcock in there because again, there's like Charlie Chaplin, Humphrey Bogart. We were there one time, and Richard Benjamin was there with his wife and Paula Prentice. So kind of, or if I'm eating at the bar, I'll try to get more of the bartenders and things. Day of the Dead.
They're wonderful. And the ghosts at Musso and Frank's, do you? Do you feel comfortable among them?
Yeah. Oh, I'm comfortable with ghosts everywhere. If I travel anywhere around the world, I'll try to visit an old cemetery with Toby and try to remember those that are passed, and visit the headstones and feel the energy.
A prior guest, Lisa Teasley, who's a writer and a painter, she for a while lived in Laurel Canyon in a house that used to be Led Zeppelin's party house. But she said that house was full of ghosts and like generations of artists.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Well, that's the whole thing. All of Laurel Canyon has so much history. There's
Yeah.
a real beauty there of from film and music history that just is, pouring down. The ghosts just pour into the city, to Hollywood.
I'm also testing out a new question, which is, if there's a song or a smell or a sound that is like just captures LA for you.
Well, again, a song, the first song for any like almost any Mamas and Papas song
Oh yeah. Yeah.
for me captures LA,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So for me, anytime I put on any Mama and Papa's music, it's just like you feel like even to this day, it doesn't feel like the 60s. It feels like now that you're moving through Los Angeles and because they were also very playful, very tongue-in-cheek, and there's kind of like and kind of open for adventure in a way. And then when it
Yeah.
comes to smell, it's the tar pits,
Tar Pits.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
you know, the smell of tar for me.
I do have a final question, which is if you could ask anyone about the 5 places that define LA for them, who would you ask?
Yeah, that's the easiest one. For me,
Oh,
it's my friend Jim Hyman, who knows everything about LA. He knows where
amazing.
all the bodies are buried. He knows so much history of LA. He grew up, born and raised, never lived anywhere else. He's the author of so many books on LA. So he's the executive editor of Toshin Books. So he edited the big book of Los Angeles.
Mm.
And then some of his other books, I kind of wrote down some of the, which I know was like California Crazy. So he's the
Uh,
author of California Crazy, the early version, and then Toshin just did a big, fancier version. So all the interesting architecture, that like Tale of the Pup and things like that were in LA at the time. Dark City is one of his other titles, which captures kind of the darkness of religion and gangs and gangsters and let me take your orders, the menus of LA and so what other books he did? Sins of the City, Out with the Stars, so the nightlife of LA. And so he has the greatest collection of LA's stuff, of menus, of items of interest and things in LA. He's just so he's the perfect
I'm sure he has some great stories.
and I'm sure he has beyond great stories.
Maybe I should have asked you what's a taste that defines LA for you? Like
That's a good question. Now you're getting me like now my head's like going. Well, the martini at Musso and Frank's, or is a potato knish with gravy at Canter's, or is it the enchiladas Howard at El Coyote? Like El Coyote has a lot of history too, or is this the taco arugula from Canter's too?
To learn more about Gary Baseman's work and the people and places mentioned in this conversation, please check out the show notes. To hear more stories of the places that define Los Angeles, please subscribe. The best way to support the show is to leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. 5 Places is produced by Annalie Garakani, Quinn Wynn, and me, Emmanuelle Bouclier, for the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design. We recorded on Chumash, Tongva, and Mikanakan land. Thank you for listening.
I love the paintings behind you.
There were vintage pieces that I got years ago at Brentfield for like the last day. People were just getting rid of them, so they basically paid me to take them away. And then they sat in my garage for like 15 years or something. And then I finally took them out and painted on them, and I love them more than anything.
Oh, they're really beautiful.
So it's kind of a collaboration with Ralph W. Williamson, who's the original painter of the portraits.
Yeah, I love it.